I've had a few questions from people dealing with how to get the most out of Kriya Yoga in their meditation practice. And I actually started writing a section on this in the upcoming Kriya Yoga book that I'm working on, the second Kriya Yoga book. And so I wanted to share with you some real basic things that you can do to get the most out of your Kriya practice, or any meditation practice for that matter. First of all, one of the keys to success in meditation or yoga practice is the capacity for detachment. And a lot of people, when they hear the word detachment, they think of someone boring, withdrawn, aloof, not really engaged in life, and that's not it at all. In the same way that when Lahiri Mahasaya talks about renunciation in his Bhagavad Gita commentary, he's not talking about running off to the mountains or getting rid of your work and your money and all these sorts of things. He's talking about inner renunciation, which is playing your role, doing your part, being appropriate to who you are in this world as a unique, individualized aspect of the divine, but not being caught up in the fruits of the actions, or being identified with whether you're successful or whether you fail or not, because ultimately that's not up to you. In that same manner, in that same vein, the idea of detachment works the same way. It doesn't mean that when joy comes into your life, you push it away and say, I don't want to have anything to do with that, I'm detached. A lot of people do that, and they have some weird head trip going on. And it doesn't mean that when pain comes into your life, loss occurs, you don't man up and look stoic and say, oh, I'm detached from that. It's how you deal with it in the moment. So attachment and detachment, you are attached to something when you cling to it. So something can come into your life and it passes. You let it go. The joy arises. You let it be there. You're in the moment. It fades. You let it go. You don't cling to it. The moment you start to cling to it, it's the moment that you start to experience sorrow. When pain comes into your life, you don't push it away. You don't fight it. You don't say, I'm better than this. It's an experience. It's part of being in this world, in this realm. It arises. It comes into your awareness. You don't cling to it. You don't dwell on it. You don't make it into a problematic story. Because we all have experienced pain, some worse than others. You let it go. It comes in, it goes away. You don't dwell on it. When you dwell on pleasure and pain, that's when you start to create psychological problems, so that when you sit to meditate, you can't meditate because you're focused on wanting that joy back, or wanting to not have ever experienced that pain. You see, you're still attached to it. So in the same way, in order to get the most mileage out of your meditation and to actually benefit from your Kriya practice, you have to start cultivating the practice of detachment. And what does that mean? First of all, it means you see yourself for what you are, as this point in space, this infinite consciousness that is experiencing the rise and fall of life. The next thing you do is you arrange your life in such a way that your meditations can actually be successful. And what do I mean by that? Well, for example, if you're going to learn a musical instrument and you're playing that instrument and you're practicing it, but at the same time you're having a conversation, you're watching the news, you're not really engaged in what your fingers are doing with the musical instrument, you're not really engaged with the music, you're not going to learn it very well. You're not going to do a very good job. So when the time comes to perform, you'll probably fail. The same thing goes with exercise. When you exercise, you're just focused on the exercise. Otherwise, what might happen? You might get hurt. So we need to treat meditation in the same way that we treat these other things that are important to us in life. And when you first sit to meditate, you have already arranged your life so that for a certain duration of time, you're able to focus completely and totally on meditation without distraction. If you can't do that, your first step is to find a way to do that. And again, the key here is detachment, because you might say, oh, well, I want to watch this TV show, or I want to hang out with my friend, or I want to visit my family, or whatever it might be. There's countless things, and it's all different for everybody. And if you're attached to these certain things, you're not going to be able to meditate for obvious reasons, because you're not going to create the space to do it because of these distractions. And so it really boils down to what's important to you. If it's important to you to spend all this time with family, to spend time with friends, to watch TV shows, to do whatever else you need to do, be honest with yourself. That's more important. Just do it. Forget about it. However, if your inner calling, your inner drive really is to master this meditation, this Kriya Yoga, then you need to say, I need to be detached from these things. And so, I love you, family. I love you, friends. But for this hour, I'm not talking to you. It's just as simple as that. So that's the first step where detachment comes into play. The next step is when you sit to meditate, before you even begin your techniques or your practices, it's purging your mind and consciousness of all the things that you think are so important. And you can do that in numerous ways. Again, I'm going to be going over this in the next book, but that might not be out for a couple months or so. So for now, what does that mean? Well, one thing that I do is I'll just sit quietly in my meditation seat, sitting up straight, and I'll watch my mind. I'll notice all the things that I think are so important, all the things I think I need to do, all the things I have to remember. And I'll watch it and I'll consciously say, for now, it doesn't matter, I'm letting it go. And I'll breathe. And every time I breathe, every time I say it doesn't matter, maybe a new wave of distractions arise. Either way, it doesn't matter, I do it again. And I keep doing this until finally I'm at a point where I know I can practice my meditation technique and I can focus on that particular goal of meditation without distractions. Another thing that I do sometimes when I'm really caught up in worldly things is I will have the sense that I'm giving up all of my distractions to God, all those things that I think are so important. I imagine in my mind's eye a radiant light in front of me. And every time I think about that bill that needs paid, I imagine giving that thought or that bill up to God, dissolving into that light. Every time I think about a negative interaction I might have had with someone, I let it go to God. Every time I think about the next thing I want to enjoy doing, I give it up to God. And I keep doing this, visually feeling and imagining that I am actually sending these thoughts into that light. And so this works in two ways. Number one, it creates the sense of detachment. Number two, it more tunes you to your concept of the divine, which is an excellent space to be in before you meditate. So in order to meditate effectively, in order to get the most out of your Kriya practices, it's best to start practicing detachment and realize that when you're meditating, you need to be meditating. And you might say, well, my mind is crazy, I can't focus, I can't do this. Well, that might be true. But it's only true because you haven't practiced. It's the same thing across the board. It doesn't matter whether it's spiritual practices, any kind of practices at all. If you've not practiced, you're not going to be any good at it. And the story I always tell is that when I first started meditating, all I could do was sit for 7 minutes at most, staring at a candle flame, still thinking about everything, feeling anxious, not being able to get anywhere. But I knew that I had to practice. And so in time, my capacity to sit quietly, my capacity to focus grew because I practiced. It didn't happen immediately. It took me months. It took me years. It took a long time. And the reality of the situation is that's how it works. Anyone who promises a technique that's going to get you in a samadhi experience immediately, or that you're on a rocket ship to spiritual growth, there's no rocket ship to spiritual growth. You might already start with you might have a good start. I mean, your mind might already be a little clearer. You might already be more psychologically healthy than the other guy. So people who experience rocket ship enlightenment, it's because on some other level they've probably done some work, whether this lifetime, past lifetimes, doesn't matter. The point is you have to start doing it now. That way your future changes. Because all of your experiences right now are the result of your past thoughts and actions. All of them. All of the experiences that you're going to have, they're the results of your current thoughts, actions, deeds. And we have to know this. So if you start practicing meditation now, you start practicing whatever it takes, and I mean that. You have to do whatever it takes to set aside that time, to let go of attachment to all the things you think are so important, even if it feels weird, even if you haven't, some people freak out when they quit thinking about things because they're afraid everything's going to fall apart. I guarantee you it's not going to fall apart. Your problems will be there when you get back. But then you can deal with them more effectively. The point being that you have to do whatever it takes to start giving yourself permission to let go of this attachment to the human condition. Because only by letting go of the attachment to your personality, your history, who you think you are, who your guru is, whatever you find to be important or that you identify with, the only way you can experience God or cosmic consciousness is by letting it go. Just letting it go, and then practicing your meditation. Because, the example I gave in this book is if you're in West Virginia and you want to get to California, you have to let go of your attachment to the people, the place, the situations in West Virginia. Otherwise, you'll never make it to California. You'll stay stuck in West Virginia. So the same thing with cosmic consciousness and self-realization. If you really want cosmic consciousness and self-realization, you have to let go of attachment to all these human concerns, at least for an hour a day, at least. And then direct your awareness to that which you want to realize. When you can start doing that, then you will find that these practices, the Kriya Pranayama, mantra meditation, contemplation, they become dynamic. They become enlivened. It's something expansive and enjoyable to explore, because you're not just fending off things you want to get away from or escape from. You're free of them. You're detached from them, so you can explore the rest of you, the rest of your consciousness, and even pure infinite consciousness, which is the best thing to explore, and get an understanding of how you are it in whatever way you can. Anyway, you have to start with detachment, and once you can do that, that makes meditation easier. Although meditation itself makes it easier, so it kind of feeds upon itself. And then in time, you're less bothered by life. You're able to experience the joys as they arise. You experience the pain as they arise, but you let them go, because there will always be a new joy. There will always be a new pain. You're not going to get rid of that as long as you're in this embodied world. And then you can make peace with that, and then you're really alive. That's really the thing here. Is life isn't about getting away from something, about pushing away these things that we don't like about the world. It's about embracing what is what you are, knowing what you are, and living from that point where you are able to be in this world appropriately, acting as a human being with other human beings within the world, within the environment, while also existing on the subtler levels, because there's more to you than just this world. And as you mature and grow spiritually, you start to expand through the rest of you, I like to say. And then you're a fully realized individual, which is kind of a contradiction of terms, because when you're a fully realized individual, you're everything. But anyway, these are things to contemplate, and they don't make sense, I know. They don't make sense with words, but they can be experienced. So consider this. Start finding a way to practice detachment. Again, not to push things away, not to be averse to things, and not to try to hold on to all those things that you love, but to simply be able to let go of what's not useful during meditation, so that you can focus on meditation. And then your meditation practice will deepen, and you'll be able to experience and acknowledge what you are, and all those things that mystics talk about, all those things that spiritual people talk about that seem kind of weird because they're kind of paradoxical. You have an aha moment and you understand them. And you start growing more fully into what you are as this individualized aspect of pure infinite consciousness. So consider it, try it, and we'll be in touch soon.